Avery, whose show is this? And we're live. Welcome, everybody, here to the Lakers Lounge Podcast. I'm Anthony Irwin, Senior Lakers Insider for Clutch Points. And today on the show, we will be talking about JJ Redick. He had a great regular season. He had a really bad postseason. He has a really bright future ahead of him. And I believe the work ethic to make that bright future happen. But there's a lot that he needs to learn from over the course of the year, and then certainly in those playoffs. So it should be a really fun conversation. This also happens, by the way, on the heels of the New York Knicks firing Tom Thibodeau, and I think it's a good backdrop for this conversation because Tibbs is so famously stubborn. So we'll talk about it all. We'll loop it all in together. Let's go ahead and get to it. Quick reminder, please do hit that subscribe button. Please do hit that like button. Please hit that share button. That stuff helps quite a bit as well. And then if you guys are listening to this in its pod form, please hit subscribe wherever it is that you get your podcasts, preferably on Odyssey, because I am a company man. Also, if you guys are watching on Twitter, which you can follow me on Twitter at Anthony Irwin LA. If you're watching there on Twitter, head on over to youtube.com/@Lakers Lounge to find the show there and hit that subscribe button while you are here. All right. Let's start with Tibbs and the Knicks' decision to fire him. This season, obviously, they succeeded a little bit more than to be expected. That series against Boston went really well for them. And, Boston lost Tatum later in that series, but that, it was probably heading towards a Knicks win there anyway. And then I thought they were just thoroughly overmatched, both in terms of kind of personnel and culture and identity. And then also in terms of coaching, I thought Rick Carlisle thoroughly outcoached Tom Thibodeau in that series. And I don't know, outside of the trip to the conference finals, which is worth mentioning, especially for a Knicks team that hadn't been there in like 25 years or whatever it was. Outside of that accomplishment, which is a real one, I thought the postseason felt a lot like the typical Tibbs experience, which is to say that, his teams play so damn hard, and it's a credit to him that this is the case, but his teams play so damn hard in the regular season. And then when you get to the postseason and everybody else is playing that hard, you start to see a kind of declining return on investment there from those Tibbs teams, whether it's in Chicago, whether it's in Minnesota, or now here in New York. You have that. And then also, Tibbs is famous for his short rotations all throughout the regular season. And again, that's another thing that should make your team better in the playoffs, which is you rely a little bit more heavily on your best players and your team gets a little bit better as a result. Now we're starting to see a potential kind of current change, or the pendulum might be swinging back in the other direction. But where teams are relying a lot more heavily on depth, you're looking at a Pacers team that played 10 deep throughout that series. You were looking at an Oklahoma City team that plays 10 or more deep, even in the playoffs. And that reliance on fresh players is something that maybe we're just seeing a different approach here from a lot of these teams. But, with Tibbs, when you have Josh Hart playing almost, whatever it was, 45, 46 minutes a game in the regular season, one, he's broken down by the time the postseason rolls around. And two, what are you going to have him play 48? You can't, and same goes for a lot of those guys, whether it's Mikal Bridges, whether it's Jalen Brunson. When you play those guys the minutes that they play over the course of the regular season, asking them to play a little bit more, you really start to see that limited returns law at play, right? So I think, all of this is to say the reason I'm talking about Tibbs this much is because JJ Redick is a blank canvas, or at least he came into the this position as Lakers head coach as a blank canvas, never having coached before. Yeah, he has his ideologies that he's bringing to the table, and yes, we got a taste of those ideologies by way of his podcast and then Mind the Game with LeBron. But I think overall, one of the more intriguing things about JJ Redick as a young head coach is the fact that you really can take everything from this season and the experiences from throughout this season and really learn from them. And one of the things that over the course of Tibbs's career that never really happened was him taking, falling short of expectations or never winning a championship. He never, seemed to look at himself in the mirror after those seasons and then, learned anything from them. It was very much the same shit. The next season with Tibbs. And yeah, I think he gives your team a really high floor because of how hard he gets his teams to play, because of how hard he gets his teams to defend and all of that good stuff. But I also think he lowers your ceiling because of how close-minded he can be to modern styles of play. I thought we saw yet another nail in the coffin of heliocentric offenses as the Pacers were running circles around Jalen Brunson and the Knicks offense. But the stubbornness in terms of rudimentary offenses. And then again, as far as the notion of his rotation over the course of the year, and then in the postseason. And I don't know. I the reason I kind of wanted to have this JJ Redick conversation today was because if JJ is going to be the head coach that I think we all think he can be, and certainly that the Lakers think that he can be, he is going to have to seriously take a real hard look in the mirror at the way that this season played out. Even while it was a very successful regular season, it was I wouldn't go so far as to call it an unmitigated disaster in the postseason, but it was certainly a disaster, or it was disaster adjacent. So we're going to talk about that regular season. We're going to talk about the postseason. We'll talk about places that we're hoping that he grows and key places that the Lakers kind of desperately need him to grow, especially ideologically. And we'll get to all of that coming at right now. So the Lakers, they had, I thought, a fantastic regular season overall, and there were a lot of people, and honestly, a weird number of people who throughout the season were like waiting for that opportunity to say that maybe, just maybe, Darvin Ham wasn't the problem. Turns out he was. And the Lakers won more games this year than they did last year. They went 50-32 this season. They were right up close to that second seed in the, the second seed in the Western Conference. Houston pulled away there at the very end, but the Lakers got themselves a 3 seed. They avoided the play-in, which was a goal of theirs internally this season. And I thought, over the course of the regular season, when you consider everything that was going on, let's just let's lay it all out there, because the context to the season is pretty freaking insane for JJ Redick. One, he had literally never coached in the NBA or at a very high level before this. No college, no high school, no obviously pros. Not, it wasn't an assistant in the pros, nothing like that. He walked in straight off of the podcast seat, the hosting seat that he was on, straight off of the sideline calling games for ABC, and he immediately assumed everything that comes with being the head coach of the Los Angeles Lakers, which is a lot. You have assholes like me, and there's a lot of us. There are how many podcasts covering this team? There are how many, opinions and aggregator accounts that are specifically for covering the Lakers, that their entire purpose in life is to generate engagement, and they're very good at it. I'm looking at you, Lake Showdale. But you have everything that comes with being the head coach of the Los Angeles Lakers in any given season. But you're also asking JJ Redick to be the head coach of the Los Angeles Lakers while Anthony Davis and while LeBron James are on the team. Coming into the season, even though I don't think the Lakers believed in it internally, just based on their actions over the past few years, I don't think the Lakers entered the season thinking they could win a championship. So they were like, you know what? Screw it. Let's see if this guy can grow on the job. And I disagree with the approach. I think it was really a bummer that the Lakers saw LeBron James and Anthony Davis that way. And when we finally saw a roster that started to make a lot more sense, where DAngelo Russell had been moved to the bench, and eventually they traded for Dorian Finney-Smith, and you had a move back to the bigger, stronger, faster style of play that the Lakers had won a championship through. The Lakers were looking pretty damn good. And then you have the Luca trade, which we'll get to here in a bit. But overall, like when you're talking about laying expectations or setting expectations for JJ Redick, I don't even know that there was any way to possibly do that, realistically do that. It was completely uncharted territory. So you basically have to say, like, all right, well, we can't completely ignore the lack of experience, but we kind of sort of have to ignore it to a certain extent because it is still a LeBron James team. And it's a LeBron James who played at a level where he was a second team All NBA player. Anthony Davis was having a pretty damn good season in his own right also before he got hurt there at the, before he got traded. This was a team that I think was capable of a lot more than the Lakers thought internally. And yet I never thought that JJ Redick was really holding them back in the regular season. If anything, JJ Redick said, he said at his exit presser how he really wants to, or the things that he wants to be known for is people really like showing up to work, and he wants to be known for coaching the team in front of him, not hoping that it's a different team sitting in front of him. And as it pertains to the regular season, absolutely, I thought Redick was fantastic as far as understanding the roster he had in front of him, understanding its strengths, understanding its weaknesses, trying different things over the course of the year. Not willy-nilly. Like, one of the things that drove me crazy with Darvin Ham was that, he would try shit, but it wasn't really ever with a purpose. It was just like, yeah, sure, we'll do an all-wing team this time. And, oh, yeah, sure, we'll have Austin and DAngelo Russell coming off of the bench. Yeah, sure, we'll try this, we'll try that, we'll try this. And it was just kind of maddening because they just felt very rudderless under him. Every time JJ tried something over the course of the year or over the course of the regular season, I could kind of see where he was going with that. The at the beginning of the year, he gave DAngelo Russell and Austin Reeves the opportunity to continue to start together. It was a little underwhelming, as we probably envisioned it would be. And after, by the way, Max Christie had fallen out of the rotation, he gave him a go. He told him to stay engaged and stay focused. And when it came time for Christie to step into the starting lineup, I thought the season really kind of turned a corner there. I thought D'Lo was quite good off of the bench, running the second unit. I think that's kind of, in terms, like, if he ever wants to win a championship, that's probably going to be the role that he plays, is kind of X factor off of the bench who just terrorizes second unit defenses, but you also don't necessarily need a whole bunch from him. So if he disappears in the postseason, it doesn't hurt that bad. And that's essentially the role that the Lakers let him kind of fall into. And when you saw Austin being the primary initiator without having to guard the other team's best perimeter player, I thought you saw the best version of Austin that we saw over the course of the season. And then I thought when the Lakers made that trade to get to get Dorian Finney-Smith and sent out DAngelo Russell to do so, I thought that the decision to keep Rui in the starting lineup, it was a very explicable one at the time, and I kind of understood what they were doing with it, especially when you consider Dorian was nursing that ankle injury. I thought the team again turned another corner and was looking really bleeping good. And I'm not going to sit here and say it's a what if. I'm not going to sit here and bemoan the Lakers trading for Luca Doncic. That is never something you're going to hear coming out of my mouth. But that said, that group found itself, and the Lakers, I thought, were starting to find an identity. And Redick, I thought, did a really good job of enabling that and letting that happen, and pushing the right buttons to help make that happen. So you had all of that go on, and for a rookie head coach with honestly not the best assistant coaching group, we'll talk about them here in a bit as well. I asked around to see if the Lakers were making any big changes there, and it doesn't appear as if they are going to. But the even given iffy assistant coaching group, the inherent shortcomings of the Lakers organization, not enough scouting professionally with that team or with that organization. Um, iffy roster, right? We never saw Christian Wood play this season. Jackson Hayes was in and out of the lineup all year. And he had to rely heavily on Trey Jemison and Christian Coloco at various points in the season. Eventually made way for Jordan Goodwin to impress and make good on his opportunity too. Like, there was a lot that went on this regular season, and I thought JJ took it all very much in stride. And it's what made me think, wow, they might be pretty good in the postseason. And I thought that, and I don't want to go straight from this into the postseason. I want to talk about the Luca trade here next, and what we saw from him in the regular season with the Luca trade, because I thought that was a really important stretch of the season too. But overall, I thought before the Luca trade, honestly, that was some of the best coaching that I saw from almost anyone in the regular season. He got votes for Coach of the Year this year. He wasn't a finalist or anything like that. I don't think he necessarily should have been. But before the Luca trade, pressing all the buttons that he had to, keeping guys engaged when he had to, and eventually prepping the team and allowing them to, kind of fall into the habit of flexibility to be able to kind of build the airplane mid-flight when Luca showed up. I thought that was excellent stuff from JJ, and I kind of wanted to isolate it before we get to the Luca thing. So obviously the Lakers make the Luca trade. They send out their best perimeter defender in Max Christie. They send out their best interior defender in Anthony Davis. They send out their best rebounder in Anthony Davis. They sent out a guy who, by the way, for chunks of the season, and frankly, the chunks of the season when the Lakers looked their best, Anthony Davis was operating like a fulcrum of the offense. So they sent out that aspect of the team too, and brought in, obviously, a very, 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 very good Luca Doncic. I wouldn't say great quite yet, because I still think he was nursing that calf injury, and there was just a lot of learning on the fly that stopped Luca from being outright great. This is one thing that, when we look for reasons that the Lakers are going to be better next year, I actually think they're going to get a lot better Luca next season, which is kind of terrifying for the rest of the league. But yeah, they send out a huge chunk of the identity that they had kind of formulated at that point. They send those guys out. They bring in Luca, and I thought, again, because of everything that JJ did to prepare the Lakers for whatever, bump in the road or hurdle that they needed to jump over, or bridge, or river that they needed to bridge, or anything like that. I thought JJ prepped them for that moment very, very well. And I thought, given that circumstance, the Lakers handled that second. I would say, if we broke up the season into chapters, I would say the first chapter was the beginning of the season till when D'Lo was sent to the bench. And then that second chapter was from after D'Lo was sent to the bench to the Dorian trade. And then the third chapter of the regular season was that Dorian trade to the Luca trade. And then obviously the final chapter of the regular season was everything that happened after the Luca trade. If you want to split up the Luca chapter into what they looked like when they were healthy to just kind of surviving the end of the regular season, we can do that too. Your call. But just talking about that Luca chapter of the season here, I thought that for the most part, the Lakers did a really good job of implementing a system that would lead an optimist to believe, or even in my case, a pessimist to believe, that the Lakers were capable of some stuff in the postseason. I thought they were doing some cool stuff when it came to splitting up the court and having LeBron and Luca on each side of the court to basically not allow teams to just fully stack up against one or the other. I thought they were doing a really good job of allowing Austin to still have some creative responsibilities and maximizing him in that kind of tertiary or secondary creator role, depending on who else was on the court with him. I didn't think they did nearly enough laying the groundwork that was necessary so that in the postseason, Luca and LeBron could be maximized together. I thought that was probably the most disappointing aspect of the regular season to me. Was like, all right, you guys remember, to those of you who were subscribed and listening and watching all year, it just kept being like, all right, still waiting on Luca and LeBron to do literally anything together. Is it gonna happen? And it never did. It never happened in the regular season. That meant that they couldn't rely on it in the postseason. And that was, I thought, a key pitch that the Lakers should have been at least somewhat comfortable throwing, that they just could not throw in the postseason. And I thought that thoroughly limited what they were going to be capable of in that Minnesota series. So anyway, that I think is the first fair outright criticism of JJ Redick in the regular season, was not doing anything to open up the offense and get LeBron and Luca doing stuff together. So that is something that they really are going to have to like. Honestly, the Lakers released their preseason schedule the other day. Nice to see they aren't traveling as much, but to me, the thing that we all have to be paying the closest attention to is how quickly and how often LeBron and Luca are running stuff together. If we don't see enough, let alone anything, from those guys running stuff together, that's when it might be time to start hitting, maybe not the full on panic button, but you know how like those old school buttons in like, in movies, where it's such an important button that you have to like open the thing to access the button. You gotta. If we don't see anything from Luca and Austin, it's time to flip open that clear case and prep that button to be pressed because yeah, I don't think the Lakers are going to be capable of winning a championship if we don't see those guys doing anything together offensively. Your turn, my turn is not going to be enough for those guys, and it would be a waste of both of those guys' skill sets. So here's hoping that improves. But yeah, I think for the most part, the Lakers' ability to kind of, again, I used this analogy first. So Rob owes me a dime, but the Lakers' ability to build that plane mid-flight after the Luca trade and still get, win enough games to get up to the 3rd seed, that was really impressive. And that's why heading into the postseason, you had Pete and I record an episode where we were like, we think they can win a championship. Jovan and I couldn't even find nits to pick going into the postseason. And it had a lot to do with everything that we saw from, especially JJ Redick. I thought it was a really impressive regular season, and it had us flying high. That plane was flying real high going into the postseason. And then so we'll talk about the postseason and to what extent this is something I want to ask you guys. Hit me in the comments, whether it's live or whenever you want to. And by the way, when you guys leave comments, I read every single comment. I respond to the ones that I think are unfair, and maybe I could do a better job of responding to more comments. But I read all of your guys' comments. I get an email for all of them. So hit me with them whenever you want. But anyway, I want to know what you guys think as far as like to what extent the postseason should overshadow what we saw from JJ in the regular season. Because what we saw from JJ in the postseason, I honestly think was like, I'm going to sound super old. Maybe I should turn my hat backwards for when I say this and I sound super old. Ready? What we saw from JJ Redick in the postseason gave me the ick. Yeah. You hear that? That was my daughter's eyes rolling. But yeah, I just thought that like the regular season JJ Redick, when he says one of his priorities is to be really good with the team in front of him, I believe him. Based on the regular season, I absolutely believe him. In the postseason, when the temperature gets a little hotter, that pressure starts rising, I did not like at all what we saw, and I think this is a, Dark Galaxy here with, I don't like his stubbornness. Yeah, I didn't like it at all either. And what we have seen, even Tibbs did this, by the way. Even Tibbs, the most stubborn coach of his era, did this. But as the postseason presented the teams that made it all the way to the conference finals, as the postseason presented those teams problems, the teams that were able to get all the way to the conference finals, and then, definitely the teams that made it to the actual finals, rather than kind of contract their options and contract the number of players that Mark Daigneault or Rick Carlisle believed in or trusted, rather than contract that number, that rotation, we actually saw more guys make their way into series. Kenrich Williams played a key role against the Minnesota Timberwolves. You can just go down the line of Indiana Pacers who Ben Shepherd came in and it kind of surprised the TNT guys while they were calling that series. Like, oh shit, wow, look at that guy, and he played key minutes. You can go down the line, and whenever like it looked like New York was kind of starting to present Indiana a real problem, Carlisle was like, well, I've seen this guy play all year. Let's give him a go. Let's see if he can give us some good minutes here. Tibbs did this too, where it was like, all right, we need somebody to stay in front of Halliburton. We need somebody to just kind of nag him a little bit. They put DeLon Wright into playoff games. And this is the thing, like, as much as people want to say, well, JJ Redick had a bad roster and he didn't have this and he didn't have that. It's like, yeah, to a certain extent, I'm with you. But to contract your rotation to the point where Gabe Vincent doesn't get into the fourth quarter of a playoff game, to contract your rotation to where you only have 5 guys playing that fourth quarter, that's terrifying for what he's capable of moving forward. And like the way that he bristled at any kind of criticism about that series and about that decision, especially, like that was it was just it was not a good look. The decision itself to not play anybody else in that fourth quarter, I thought at best you can call it a gamble. If you really want to really want to keep up for him, okay, you can call it a gamble. Not saying Darius, was caping up for JJ when he said this, but one factor there was that game was moving along really slowly. There were a lot of breaks, because of the extra timeouts and TV timeouts and reviews and stuff like that. Bonus situations in that game. So maybe JJ thought that he could maybe get those guys through it. But as we found out, one, he wasn't able to. Those guys did wear down over the course of that fourth quarter. And 2, it pissed off guys in his locker room. And then for him, when presented an opportunity to say, hand of God, my bad, it was like, what? You are you only asking me about that because I'm inexperienced? It's like, yes, actually, yeah, I am asking you that. I didn't ask that question, but if I'm the reporter there and he bristles that way, I'd be like, yeah, I am asking you that because you're inexperienced. I am asking you that because that's a decision that no other coach has made in the modern history of the NBA. You did something nobody else has ever done, not even Tibbs. And so like between the decision itself and then the I thought poor reaction to criticism about the decision, I just, that again, to quote Gen Alphas or whatever gen we're on right now, it gave me the ick. I think that was a Gen Z thing. I think that's a Gen Z thing. But yeah, I just that was not good to me. And I thought, the other part of the postseason that drove me insane was you based on the way that Minnesota was attacking the Lakers defensively over the course of the series, and you should have known coming into the series that eventually Minnesota is going to try to pick on Austin. They're going to try to pick on Luca. And what New York did a really good job of over the course of the postseason, what Indiana does a really good job of, OKC doesn't have to worry about this because literally everybody on that team can defend their asses off. But those teams that had guys that needed to be hidden, those teams, the Warriors were just incredible at this back during their heyday. All right, you want to challenge Steph, you want to ISO Steph, you want to get him out on a switch and put him on an island, okay, but you're going to have to work your ass off to do it. And by the time you actually get that switch, by the time you actually do get Steph isolated out on an island, you're going to have 5 or 6 seconds to attack him. And so either that player that is finally attacking Steph in space, or that is finally attacking Brunson in space, that is finally attacking, you name them, in space, they have a very limited amount of time. That window has shrunken completely, And on top of it, if they don't generate a really good look for themselves, you are really up against it if they have to pass the ball out of that situation. And then you compare that to the way that the Lakers were defending, and it's like, oh, yeah, sure. I guess you can attack Austin with like 17 seconds left on the shot clock. Yeah, I mean, okay, probably not best for us, but all right, good luck. And then like Minnesota, like, are you sure? Over the course of the series, I felt like those ball handlers that were attacking the Lakers, kind of weaker defenders, were like looking at the sideline, like, JJ, we're still doing this? Are you sure about this? Julius Randle had the series of his life against the Lakers. And then when it came time and he wasn't allowed to just like get whatever switch he wanted against the OKC Thunder, would you look at that? Randall turned back into a pumpkin. So like just not enough adjustment there. I know a lot of people want to talk about the Dalton Connect thing and never giving him a chance. Okay. I kind of see that, especially given the point that I made at the beginning of the segment. To me, the bigger one was the complete lack of trust that he had in Jackson Hayes. You're already, paper thin at center, and then now you're basically asking a team to play small ball for 48 minutes. But when the Lakers got eliminated and Rudy Gobert had the game of his lifetime, the Lakers played 48 minutes of small ball. Wouldn't you know it, it didn't work out. The only not small ball moments that they had out there was with Maxi Kleba. It was just I just thought JJ completely short circuited, and I do think it is enough to me. I know I asked you guys this earlier, but it was enough to me to really rethink what he might be capable of here moving forward, and he's going to have to really work to prove that that was a blip on the radar and that it won't happen again. And the problem too is that like what we see in the regular season isn't necessarily going to make me feel all that much better, because what happens when the temperatures rise again? The over reliance on Luca ball. I don't think that was a Luca thing. I thought that the Lakers, I just thought they just kind of bent over for Minnesota in that series, and everything that Minnesota was taking away from them, they were like, oh, okay. I kind of want to run a little bit more motion, but I guess we're not going to do that either. I wanted to. I don't necessarily want Austin guarding Anthony Edwards for 14 seconds on the shot clock. That doesn't seem great. And it was just like, well, shoot, they made us do it. I guess we got to figure this out now. And I was just thoroughly disappointed by how passive the Lakers became. And when you're talking about a passive team or passive culture, you do kind of have to talk about the head coach in that spot. And that's where I thought, JJ showed me some stuff and made some decisions, and then did not respond well to criticism over those decisions in that series. That, going into the postseason next year, I am going to be a little nervous. I really am. It almost doesn't matter what kind of season the Lakers have next regular season. If the temperatures rise and the pressure rises next year going into the postseason, I'm going to be nervous about how JJ handles those moments. And, I guess we all have to wait and see. Last kind of thing here before I get into, I saw we have a super comment or a question that y'all want answered. The last thing that I wanted to talk about here was the coaching staff. In talking to people going into the season last year around the league, nobody was like over the moon about the staff that the Lakers put together. And, you ask around, hey, why are the Lakers struggling to find better assistant coaches? And a lot of times the response is, well, they don't pay assistant coaches as well as they need to. They fired Frank Vogel a season after winning a championship. They fired Darvin Ham a season after making a Western Conference Finals. yeah, they, seem to have more belief in JJ Redick here moving forward, but you kind of need him to prove it before, assistant coaches are willing to kind of dive in head first, and risk their professional well-being. Um, but I kind of was hoping after the one season there and after making it clear that the Lakers really are invested in JJ Redick as their head coach here, for the foreseeable future, the hope was that they would get some better assistant coaches. That time has kind of sort of come and gone at this point. We haven't heard about any assistants on this staff that have been let go. So that makes it difficult to tell somebody that there's a position, there's an opening, which is kind of disappointing. I thought that, and I think it's going to require real ingenuity offensively and strategically to get the most out of Luca, LeBron, and Austin, and because they're going to need to maximize those guys. If the intent is to go into next season with those three guys on the roster, your offense needs to be best in the league good to make up for some of the defensive questions that are going to come along with that trio. And I don't think this coaching staff is good enough strategically to maximize those guys in that way. So that makes me a little nervous. Also, defensively, I didn't think we saw enough, kind of uh, tweaking with approaches, whether it's like a zone defense, whether it's not, there was, man, over the whole season, it was a constant. There were two questions that I felt like I had to ask a bunch on the show, which is, we're still doing this much switching, and hey, it seems like there's a real consistent decrease in organized offense over the course of the year. Uh, is that going to be a thing again next year? And those are things that, like, I'm sorry, between the decrease in organized offense and the lack of curiosity or creativity defensively over the course of the year. And then on top of that, too, like, I'm sorry, you had former NBA head coaches on your staff last year. None of them stepped up and said, "Hey, this is really stupid. We should probably make a sub in the fourth quarter." None of them did. To me, that's enough to fire both of Scotty Brooks and Nate McMillan. They didn't, as it appears right now. They're going to be going in with much of the same kind of infrastructure as we saw last year. And it's, maybe those guys grow, maybe they get better, but as it stands right now, it is a little disappointing. All this said, as far as the bright future thing, there are two factors that I would kind of point to, that make me believe in JJ as a coaching prospect moving forward. One, he appears to be a really, really, really good communicator with his guys. I was the one who did a lot of reporting with Darvin Ham and how he very quickly lost the locker room because of inconsistent communication and because of inconsistent messaging from player to player. I never got any sense of that over the course of the season with JJ, and that's honestly the most important part of being an NBA head coach, is being that CEO, overseeing a whole bunch of stuff, but also understanding what each player needs to stay engaged over the course of a long and arduous season. So that makes me believe that JJ is going to be at least pretty freaking good at this. The other part of this too is, he's a freaking maniac when it comes to his work ethic. He climbed this sports media industry really, really quickly. That is something that is really hard to do. And that indicates a work ethic that I think can carry over. He's really online, and I always get the sense that if enough of us who analyze this team are kind of offering up similar analysis, I believe that JJ sees a lot of that stuff and takes it to heart. Now, you don't necessarily want him overreacting to public pressure and public criticism and analysis and stuff like that, but I think there are some of us who do a pretty good job with this. And it is kind of nice to have some outside eyes on this so that you at least have that conversation with your coaching staff. So, between his work ethic, between the communication and all that stuff, I do really believe that JJ has a bright future in this. Now, will he attain that bright future quickly enough to maximize the Luca LeBron window? Hopefully. I really, really hope so. Will he, if not that, will he learn quickly enough to maximize the Luca window? Hopefully. And that was the hope with Luke. Walton was, hey, maybe he'll continue to learn and this and that and the other. He never did. And, frankly, Luke was such a bad coach that Brooke Lopez hated his time with the Lakers. The Lakers just let Julius Randle walk for some dumb reason. And I think that had a lot to do with Luke's poor coaching too. There was a bad coach can have a ripple effect across your organization. And JJ is going to have to really improve. He was a bad coach, I thought, in the postseason, especially compared to his peers. And I know a lot of people are like, well, you got to give him, you got to give him some credit. You got to take some context into the matter here. He's a rookie coach. I don't care anymore. Once you make it to the postseason, you're a coach. You've had a whole season to learn on the job, and I was really disappointed by that. So he's going to have to get a lot better. I think he will, and we'll see what that looks like. We have a super comment here, so we will go ahead and dive on in to that. But first, we have to play the most important sound on the show. All right, so Marley Villasenor writes, do you think our culture of AAU youth basketball is why European b-ball IQ tends to be higher today? Also, Andor is the best show of the year, right? So to that second part, I haven't seen anything better than Andor, personally. So it'll probably be my favorite show of the year. And as far as AAU basketball versus the Euro circuit, I want to be really, really careful here because AAU does give a lot of people from some tougher communities some opportunities that they would not otherwise have. And it is the best system that we have, even though I think it needs some tweaking. I do think that when people start criticizing AAU, I think oftentimes there are some undertones at play there that I want to try to avoid here while I criticize AAU. One, at its highest levels, where I think AAU basketball and European approaches to basketball, the biggest kind of foundational problem with those two systems and difference between those two systems is the individual versus team first approach. And what I mean by that is like AAU systems, the way that they get paid oftentimes the best is by cranking out, training and cranking out future pros. And one of the, I think, downsides to there being a little bit less import placed on high school sports is that, in high school sports, there is a lot more like school pride, and winning matters a lot more than individual development. And I think in AAU, especially at its highest levels where you're talking about these programs that are worth a ton of money and get a ton of money, I think a lot of times there is too much too much focus and prioritization on individual skill sets and not enough focus on team wide concepts. And to compare that to like Europe, where I think soccer plays a big role in this too. I also think like this isn't an AAU problem. This specifically, there's a lot more specialization in American youth sports than there is in European youth sports. Luca was just on the Mind the Game pod, and he talked about how he played all kinds of sports growing up. And when for those of us who grow up here in the States, as soon as you appear to be any good at a sport, those club teams want their fingers on you, and it is like they get those. You are clenched in that system, and it was like you are going to get specialized training, and you are not to play these other sports. I remember when I was coaching, in high school, when I was coaching, after I graduated high school, I was coaching a high school program. Um, the thing that parents kind of thanked me for the most was I told them, yeah, if your kid wants to play baseball in the off season, sure. Obviously a player can't play soccer and basketball at the same time because those are two same season sports. That's illegal, or it was, I don't think that's changed. But if you want to play football and basketball, go for it. If you want to play basketball and run track, all right, go for it. But I always looked at the high school experience, and I grew up, when I was young, I played soccer, I played basketball, I played volleyball, I played baseball. I'm a decent golfer. There were all of these things, and you learn different lessons that actually make you better at the other sports. In soccer, the nonverbal communication and cutting and player and ball movement, like that's something that obviously translates directly to basketball. In golf, hand-eye coordination, that is really important for basketball. In baseball, not having any fear when you're standing there in the batter's box while a pitcher is throwing a projectile at your general vicinity at really high speeds. I used to love having football players on my basketball team because those dudes defended their asses off. So I think that's another big thing that specialization has really impacted, um, the basketball IQ and the development in, here in the States compared to elsewhere. And then finally, look, like, you look at some of the situations that some of these players come from internationally, and that's not to say that we don't have bad situations. You don't have kids coming from bad situations here. But there's a level of desperation that you see from Giannis or from Jokic or from Doncic and for some of those situations, like that's their only way out of at times war-torn countries. And now look, there is sometimes, like I talked about with AAU, there is only one path for some of those kids out of those situations, and it is to be really good at basketball. But it I think only compounds the differences in the two situations. So that desperation leads to, in here in the States, it's like, oh, I don't give a I don't care if my team loses in this tournament. I need to score my 35 so that the scout seeds that. And I think internationally, and I have some friends who have played internationally and coached internationally. If your team isn't succeeding, um, you don't have as many scouts at your games. So, yeah, I think that the biggest thing there is the individual versus team wide approach, the specialization, domestically versus internationally, I don't necessarily think the other thing too is there's been a ton of investment that the NBA has made to grow the sport internationally. I would like to see the NBA take maybe a little bit more, uh, you know, i- I guess, hands-on approach with AAU, to kind of smooth out some of those wrinkles as well. It's a fascinating subject that I could honestly, I just rambled on it for 5 minutes by myself. It's one of my favorite subjects to talk about at Summer League with scouts and assistant coaches and stuff like that, who come from these different backgrounds, because there's a lot at play. Whoops. Here we go. All right, that is going to do it, I believe, here for this this episode of the Lakers. This flew by. That was a really fun episode. For it being single subject matter. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Please do hit that subscribe button. Please do hit that like button. Again, if you guys are listening to this in its podcast form, hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you get your pods, preferably on Odyssey. And until the next time you guys hear from me, I'm Anthony Irwin saying, have a great rest of your day. Make somebody else's. I'll talk to you tomorrow with a fun guest. We have a fun guest lined up for tomorrow. I'm not going to jinx it because lately it has been an actual jinx. So we'll talk to you tomorrow.